Yeah, well, we are now live and people are joining. Welcome, everyone. You're in the right place. This is a 1-hour webinar with me, Rich, and Henry on transferring from consulting to product management. We will twiddle our thumbs for a couple of minutes. We started almost on time, and I can see more and more people joining. I think we had 250 odd people interested to come along, so we'll give it a minute or so for them to join. Bit of housekeeping in the meantime. We will try and keep this to an hour. My last webinar I was 2 minutes over, so I'm gonna try and improve. not bad. So it's going to be an hour. There's going to be plenty of time for Q&A. So if you've got specific questions, don't worry. We're not going to drone on and talk at you for 59 minutes. There's going to be a good 15-20 minutes, I'd say, for Q&A. And we're going to do this in 4 sections, effectively. So let me kick off, and if more people join, they'll just have to miss the glamorous introductions and things like that. So we're going to start with some intros. I'll tell you a little bit about me and a bit about Moving On, pass over to Henry, who I'm really super glad can join us today. I know nothing about product management. Henry knows everything about product management. So this is very much going to be the Henry show. We've then got a bit of a Q&A from me. So I've got a bunch of questions that come up quite frequently through Moving On, and Henry's going to talk us through some answers. We'll then have some Q&A from you guys. We'll be able to use the Q&A functionality. So everybody on the call is kind of anonymous. You're listening in, watching us. If you want to submit a question at any point, whack it in the Q&A functionality down the bottom. I'll pick it up in the second half of the webinar. And then most excitingly, I've twisted Henry's arm, and he has put together a bespoke offer for people who are joining this call and kind of Move Me On users as concerns kind of getting into a product management career. So he's going to talk us through that at the end of the call. It's the first time we've done something like this. I'm pretty excited about it. Thankful to Henry for kind of innovating his offer and putting something together. So do stay on to the end to hear all about that and kind of register your interest if you're keen. So I think we'll get cracking with intros. Most people probably know me. I'm Rich. I'm one of the co-founders at Move Me On. Effectively, Move Me On was set up because I was a consultant and I was struggling to find a resource that was dedicated to helping people plot out consulting careers. So we set up Move Me On with that mission to help people discover their options for moving up through consulting or moving out of consulting, and what that means for all sorts of things like pay and career progression and work-life balance, and also discovering opportunities through our platform. So about 4,000 to 5,000 organizations have now done hiring through Move Me On, and companies of all shapes and sizes. So that's more about me. I'm going to hand over to Henry, and he can tell you all about himself.
Yes, I'm Henry Latham. I got into product probably about 11 years ago. So came up with an idea for a startup, traveling in Brazil by myself actually at the time. Came back to final year at university, background actually in politics and Spanish. That startup failed 2 years later, made sort of every mistake under the sun, but that's what I sort of fell in love with product. And up until 3 years ago, the sort of burning question I had after that first run-in with product was, what makes product succeed and fail, and what makes people effective as product managers, product leaders, and what makes them ineffective sometimes at product. Fast forward to 3 years ago, a lot of experience in startups, consulting, product consulting. And I started a company called Prod MBA, where over the last 3 years, I've directly coached over 280 product managers, aspiring product managers as well, to really master product management and how we approach building products effectively. So we do that with an 8-week boot camp where we get students not just to understand the theory, sit there and watch PowerPoints, but actually build a real product and master a product management playbook in the process.
Cheers, Henry. That's really helpful. And I think always amazing when people have had the kind of hands-on startup experience of doing it, and then transferred that into coaching. So kicking off the chat, I think it'd be helpful to start with a bit of framing around like product management and why it's boomed. I know on this call we'll probably have a mix of people, some people who have done pure consulting and almost no product, some people have done product consulting, and some people are probably already in product management. So particularly for those still in consulting, what have you seen evolve over the last sort of 5-10 years, and why is this such an in-demand area now? And I'm happy to chip in my 2 cents after we hear from you.
Yeah. Please do, actually. So let's start with what product management is, because there are many misconceptions, both for people working as product managers and people, or hiring product managers, and people trying to get into product management. So product management, as you know, if we simplify it, it means you're managing a product, right? Pretty straightforward. That begs the question, obviously, well, what is a product? We commonly think of the basic understanding of product management. The wrong assumption is that it essentially equates to project management. Okay, so what do we mean by that? It means that we are not really involved in like working out what we should build. We manage how we build the thing, right? So it's a classic project management, right? So they're organizing the different pieces that are already there, or that someone has given you those pieces. Okay, go work out how we build stuff, what's the order we build things, etc. So it's very common to conflate project management with product management. What is a product at its core? Actually, a product is really any vehicle for delivering value. Any vehicle for delivering value. That means value in terms of user value. So are we building something like people actually want and get value from? And also business value. Business value, i.e., are we able to generate revenue, ideally sufficient revenue to make us profitable? Or do we at least contribute with our product within a larger organization to these sort of baseline, the baseline metrics, revenue, profitability, etc. It's about creation of value. So product management, as it should be, is really about trying to work out, okay, well, how might we be able to create value, and coming up with ideally unique ways to solve a problem, a unique way to deliver value to a target customer, and do so in a way where we can actually make money from it. So it touches upon business, it touches upon design, it touches upon, if you're working in digital, obviously it touches on at least having some basic knowledge of technology, but not necessarily. Things like, understanding of data metrics, etc. So it's a very broad area, which is why it's also very, very popular, right? Because you get a very diverse experience in any different product management role. Why is it booming? Well, objectively, I mean, it should have always been booming, because ultimately products are the way that we create value for us as a business, right? That's how we ultimately make money. That's how we sustain ourselves as a business. Up until quite recently, though, companies have treated, let's talk about digital products. They've treated digital products as a bit just this sort of like extra cost, right? A digital product, if I'm a big business, is like, well, we know we can sort of use technology to make our lives a bit easier, help us, improve our sales, automate some stuff in our sales process, right? It's a bit of an add-on. It's there on the side, siloed away. Recently, we've seen a shift to being what we might call product-led as organization. So what does that mean? It means that the product lies at the core of the business. It's finally a recognition that, it's not going to be your sales team that, that, again, not to downplay sales, I think really, really important. It's not going to be your sales team, your marketing team that are going to, ultimately make the difference. It's going to be that core product. Sales team can't sell a product if the target user doesn't care about it. Sales team's not going to generate enough revenue if that product doesn't have a good business model, or a business model that's working, for example. So there's been a gradual shift from, what we essentially product-led companies, where we understand that there's a digital product that lies at the core, and that's really the thing that drives us as a business. So we could think of, Google being a simplified example there. Like we have this digital product, and that's it. Quite simply a search tab, and there's some clever technology in the background, but really that's it, right? And that's the core of the business, rather than technology is this add-on. We might have some tools that we build to help our sales team, some for our marketing team, some for project management, whatever it might be, for example. So that's why it's booming. Is we're starting to see companies that are product led just accelerating far ahead of the competition. Right? It is a huge competitive advantage when we drive growth through the product. Right? A great example of this would be, let's look at Miro is a product that's become very famous in the last few years. Why is that so successful? Because the core of the business is essentially this collaborative whiteboarding tool, but through clever product management, clever feature ideas, Miro is able to drive massive growth because of things like network effects. So the inherent usage, the collaborative nature of the product makes me want to invite my team in. And by my team coming in to use the product, hey, it's no longer just an empty whiteboard. I'm also getting other people in, and that's creating more value for me. Suddenly it's valuable for them as new users, right? Suddenly we have lots more value for us as a team. And that is very difficult to compete with if you're a traditional company where you're not really committing resources to the product.
That's really helpful, Henry. I guess from our perspective, obviously supporting lots of organizations to hiring, we've noticed a couple of things really. One is pretty much every business, be they an old school business or a newer business, has kind of cottoned on to the need to be product led, and a lot of businesses that 15 years ago wouldn't have had a digital element to their offering at all, like suddenly do. So I don't know, in the UK, online grocery, right, for example, 15 years ago just didn't exist. So you've had this proliferation of new businesses being launched. It's much easier to launch a new digital business nowadays as well, which helps. But you've also got all the kind of legacy businesses going, gosh, do we need to do this? Actually, it's the way we need to progress a business. So there's just a lot more businesses that have demand.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it comes down to companies that thought the market wouldn't get disrupted. To take classic in more traditional industries like construction, people that work, I know my brother's in that space, or timber, they're going, or they used to go, we'll be fine. Like, nobody who you need relationships. You can't just sort of, you can't just automate your way out of this. But actually every time we're seeing digital startups come into these markets, disrupt it, and people are finally waking up to that reality. It's not necessarily, it's a shame, I think, that many of these nice old companies are destroyed, but it's just the reality, and you have to, adapt or die in business, unfortunately.
And I think as maybe a segue onto a next set of questions, the other thing that benefits people with a consulting background considering product management is product management is a very new career. So what you've had is a massive shortage of people who have been trained in product management. 10 years ago or so, it just didn't exist. So at the moment, you've got all these new companies who need product managers. You've got all the older companies who are saying, gosh, we also need product managers. And there's just not enough people with the title product manager to go around, right? So in 20, 30 years, that might not be the case, right? We'll probably have a lot more product management training out of university and colleges, and it will become much more of a set career path. But right now, there's a pure demand supply imbalance. So what companies are having to do is recognize that the skill sets that underpin a good product manager can be built in other professions. So people with the job title consultant can actually transfer, with the right support, the right training, the right guidance, those fundamental foundational transferable skills, and become a great product manager. So that is like the zeitgeist, that's the now. It probably exists for the next X years because the demand is so high. But if you are wanting to move to product management, you've got a great demand supply issue playing in your favor, is how I see it.
Yeah, spot on. Many I speak to many companies that are hiring product managers, or when I'm coaching people, they're looking at a job description, working with them on should they apply for this role or not, helping them prep for that. And you see, many companies just don't know what they're hiring for. Right? They sort of have this idea like, we need a product manager. Like, we've heard about this thing, and we're told that it's really valuable, but they don't often know what they're hiring, and that's a really good. It can be a trap, because some, and this is true, you can end up in a role where it's okay, you think you're doing product management, but actually you end up doing project management. It can be quite common, but it's really an opportunity, because companies are, ultimately they're looking for, if they're saying, like, we don't really know what this is, we have a rough idea, that's an opportunity for you to then shape the role, right, when you go into it. And that's the thing where bringing the diversity of experience you might have into that role. In many organizations, as I said, you can really shape that. Now, obviously, you shouldn't just sort of do what first comes to mind. We should have some theoretical foundation, ideally some practical hands-on experience, which is exactly why we built Prod MBA. But it is an exciting space, as you said, at the moment, both in terms of people looking to, consultants looking to get into product management. But when you're there, it is slightly the Wild West at the moment, I think, in a positive way. Which again, if you're someone that's quite proactive, you can be empowered to really shape or craft your own shape as a product manager. What does that look like, for example?
So if we get into the nitty-gritty of essentially like the transferable skills, so we say, and we see all the time, people talking about how well consultants can transfer with the right training in the middle to do product management. What are the kind of the main foundational transferable skills that go from consulting to product management?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, let's talk about the main transferable, and then I think it's worth mentioning some of the traps that some consultants that I've seen. I've coached probably around 20 consultants that have gone into product management. So what is the number one skill that hiring teams are looking for in product management? It's communication. Okay, communication. Now, as a consultant, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't done this full time, I've dabbled, but I'm sure you have a better perspective on this, Rich. Generally you're working with lots of different clients, lots of different stakeholders. That tends to be, obviously depending on the role, but a theme, let's say, of consulting. So if you have lots of repetitions, you're able to ultimately improve your style of communication. Did this thing you were trying to communicate, did that come across well? I know many of the big consulting companies, you're taught certain storytelling frameworks. You work a lot with frameworks generally. Now, frameworks are only as useful as the person using them, but they are an effective way to sort of communicate certain ideas. So I think if communication is something that you worked on, maybe you've been trained on, you've had lots of repetition with various clients, then you sort of tick that first box, right? The most valuable skill. I think the second thing that I have noticed working with consultants getting into product management is strong analytical skills as well. So there's this ability to, be slightly detached, analyze a situation and say, what is objectively going on? How might we improve this? I've found people who have gone straight into product management or moved from, let's say, project management or engineering. They're super happy to jump in because they're naturally, they're builders, right? They like building stuff. Now that's great at times. It's great to actually get stuff done. Obviously, that's really important, but it is obviously, it's helpful to pause and say, does this thing make sense? Are we working on the best possible feature here? Or are we just, building what was next on the list, for example? So that analytical skills as a generalization is something that I've observed. I think the third thing is working quite closely with strategy. So that could be, business strategy in terms of understanding the market, understanding different revenue models available to us. And we work a lot, product strategy, I would say, is probably the second most valuable skill after communication. What is that? That's an understanding of what we should and what we should not focus on based on what kind of differentiation we're pursuing with our product. and how we might deliver that over time. So broadly, that strategic piece for understanding the market, revenue models, etc., is very powerful. And I notice actually many product managers lack the understanding of, hey, you know, I get the user. I'm creative. I can think of like nice ways we can deliver value for the user, but they don't put that business hat on. You know, they aren't thinking, okay, well, if we design the product in this way, if we build these certain set of features, then that would unlock this type of revenue stream. Or, you know, what are the maybe some longer term chess moves we might make, like gathering data early on to help us launch another product further down the line. So that strategic piece is really powerful as well. I think the you know, in terms of some anti-patterns I notice, I think generalization. So somebody please call me out if I'm wrong on this, but one thing that can hold consultants back versus, let's say, people that have worked in startups or gone straight into product management is at times overly theorizing. You know, it's very easy to, a great example is always ideation. Okay, you know, if you read some business books, the process of coming up with an idea is just brushed over, right? It's just sort of like, you know, we'll sit around a table or an Excel sheet, come up with a great business idea, and then plot, you know, write out our business plan. In reality, it's not like that. It's messy, right? Ideas come from interactions with different users. Maybe we have got this idea, we speak to a set of users, and actually our assumptions are completely wrong, and we need to, on the move, pivot to another group, or the understanding of the problem we were looking at was wrong. Maybe we didn't dig under the surface. So this ability to sort of keep moving whilst the target is moving as well at the same time, and keep executing, keep iterating, I think is something that again, absolutely not saying that is necessarily true of everybody, but I think is slightly different when you've done this more hands-on, iterative product role. Okay, rather than, say, you know, consulting, giving advice and then stepping back, for example, not having to deal with that product over year, 2 years, for example.
It's certainly something I noticed in the, I guess, the move to startup world, is sort of the need to execute and iterate. You know, certainly I think and consulting has many different guises now, and it's much more expanded than when I did pure strategy consulting. But certainly if you come from a strategy consulting background 10 years ago, it felt quite removed from the execution, right? There's lots of actual product consulting now and innovation consulting, and all which are more hands-on towards benefiting. But when I started businesses, actually what I realized was you build something quick, get it out there, get people using it, and then you iterate and you learn, you know, what they're using, what they're not using. Are they, you know, behaving in the way? So that kind of build, test with users, iterate, tweak, measure, iterate, tweak again is quite a shift mentality.
Yeah, and I think also, sorry to interrupt with that. The other thing that's super important is the ability to operate under extreme uncertainty. So obviously that's more true with an early stage startup. Like, we haven't found product market fit. Like, we're not quite sure who our market is, what the product might be, like how we, you know, how the hell we're going to make money, for example. So yeah, being able to operate without complete data, under pressure as well. You know, we've got deadlines, maybe investment targets, for example, we need to generate revenue. So being able to operate under extreme uncertainty now, I find actually that's not necessarily something that consultants do or don't have. It tends to be something from observation that comes from usually some, you know, somebody's even pre-career background. Comes down to things like resilience, ability to look objectively on certain situations, that kind of thing. So I wouldn't say that is inherent to consulting or not, but it's another key skill that you have to cultivate to be effective as a product manager.
Great. I'm going to pick up on one of the questions because I think it was really relevant and it actually came into my mind. So thanks for asking it. And if you do have questions, guys, just ping them in here. We'll definitely do like some very dedicated Q&A at the end, but I'll try and weave some in as well. So the question, Henry, is around, is product management specifically something digital? So great observation. The definition given at the beginning could have been applied to any product, from crisps to Miro. Observation from person saying this, I've been in marketing on the innovation side for about 20 years. Is this just the same thing with a new name? Not sure what's really different. Is it about tech and tech skills? Cracking question. I had the same one.
Yeah, great question. Is product management specifically for digital? No. I mean, if we talk about, as I said, the definition of a product is really like any vehicle for delivering value. In the case of, take Prod MBA, right? It's a boot camp. What's that? It's sort of a mix of a service, but there are digital tools that we use as part of that. Generally when we're talking about product management at the moment, it's for digital roles. Why is that? And I think why is the title particularly applied in that case? Because we have we've got the strategic piece, we've got the communication piece, but also we do have execution, right? So if we look in fact at the four, Ravi Mehta, who was CPO at Tinder, came up with a really nice framework called the 12 product competencies, put into 4 buckets. And essentially these 4 buckets, he said, you're not going to master all of them, but you need to have a good baseline level to be effective, to be what he calls a peak product manager. So the first one is really our ability to influence people, communication broadly. Second is product strategy. So understanding, where do we play in the market? For example, how do we differentiate ourselves? What's our business model potentially? Third one is product discovery. So your ability to really come up with ideas through communicating, interacting with your user on an ongoing basis. Fourth one is execution. Now, that doesn't necessarily that we need tech skills, but we need to have an understanding of how things work. For example, if we are going to build feature A versus B, let's say, say we're doing a search engine, right? We might have, are we going to build some sort of tagging system, or let's build like suggested search items, for example? I don't know, work on feature A or B. Now, it helps if you have a base understanding, like, what's involved with both of those things? Like tagging might be a little like less technical. You might have an understanding that if we're going to improve search terms, that's going to require a lot of data science, for example. It helps if you understand roughly, one's going to be A is going to be less complicated than B. However, we have development teams for a reason, right? We work with technical people for a reason, right? You as a product manager are not a developer, you're not a programmer, and you're not a data scientist. So in that kind of situation, as a non-technical product manager, so I'm in a position where I was non-technical and then learned how to code, probably not to be hired, but enough to sort of understand what's going on. It's going to help you just be more effective at communicating with developers, but not necessarily. If you're a really good communicator, what you're trying to do is extract ideas from your team. Right? You're trying to understand what the technical implications might be. You're trying to pull, hey, what about feature C we haven't thought about building? Maybe your data scientist comes up with some cool new idea based on their deep understanding of what's going on in the data science space. So it's not necessarily technical, but when it comes to execution, we have to understand, how do we break down technical tasks that's different from just putting it on a to-do list on, Trello, for example, like a simple Kanban board. We have to understand how the pieces fit together. So we might have different developers working on different things that form the feature, right? Backend versus front end, maybe some data science thrown in there as well. So it does help, but it's not absolutely necessary. Now, important to state, however, there are companies that only hire technical product managers. For example, I think out of the big 4, so Amazon tends to look for somebody with hire product managers with an MBA. So they look for that business understanding. So, and you see where it stems from, right? Jeff Bezos was an MBA guy as well himself, went into consulting as well. Whereas if you look at Google, Facebook, Twitter will now be in that group as well. They're looking for technical product managers because a lot of what they're doing is not discovering new market opportunities. It's sort of optimizing what's already there. Right? How do we make Google, how do we make search even more effective, even faster, for example? So point is, it's going to depend on the role you're looking for. It's going to depend on the role you're looking for. But yes, broadly, we're talking about digital. Does it mean that product management is only about digital product management? No. All products, they follow the same principles, which is how do we sort of discover a potential problem to solve for a specific audience? How do we then come up with a solution or set of solutions to deliver value for them? And then finally, how do we actually execute to deliver that whilst also generating revenue for us as a business? Sorry, long-winded answer.
No worries. No, I think it's really important, and we often hear from clients who are looking for non-technical project managers that that project manager has to be the bridge between the kind of the business, the making money, and the teams that can build this thing. I think just to finish, or to give you my 1 cent's worth on this question, the reality is that the explosion in jobs, the imbalance between supply and demand, has been driven by digital, right? So it's not to say that product managers can't be product managers for crisps. It's just that we've probably always had that product management supply of talent in the market for crisps. Digital, there's been this massive boom, massive requirement.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the title, right, as well. Like, yeah, there is probably a crisp product manager, but they just didn't call it product manager.
They call it product manager. So I think you know where the big career opportunity has been is this explosion of building digital products and the ease at which digital products can now be built. Loads of great questions coming in. I'm getting quite excited for tackling all of those. So we've done kind of transferable skills. You've talked a bit about the traps. Just zooming forward a bit. So when you're in a product management career, and I'm sure we've got some people here who are either in consulting firms in more product roles, or perhaps even in their first product management job, what does that career track look like as you become more senior? You know, what are the team structures? Who are you working with? And what are your kind of tips for accelerating your product management career?
Yeah, good question. So the typical path, if you're coming, and again, it really depends on the company. So I'm going to give a sort of a general view of it. As I said, some product management roles are a bit more project management-y. So you might even think you're doing product management, you're not, but then eventually you migrate to doing true product management, which is a bit of strategy, more communication, stakeholder management, etc. Generally, though, let's say you are working as you get your first role as a product manager. The typical path then would be to move to senior product manager. In terms of your shape, that means you're tending a bit more towards managing product strategy, i.e. high level. Where does this product play in the market, rather than focus on execution as you would as a junior or mid-level? At that point, you might want to become a lead product manager, where you just master the art of product management, right? For example, product discovery skills, your strategy skills, communication skills, execution as well. Right? More of a coaching role for other product managers in an organization, usually in a larger company. If you carry down the leadership track, you go from senior PM into like product director or a VP, where you're managing usually a suite of products. And that will depend on the size of the organization, but generally, you know, multiple products, where you're going to be managing multiple product managers directly. In that kind of situation, you're going even more onto the stakeholder management piece, you know, starting to be more involved in shaping the product vision. So that's, you know, what is the outcome that we're driving towards, that we're going to inspire the team. So if that's, you know, Uber, it's something like, how do we make transport as what's the word? They use something like flowing as water, for example. It's that more sort of aspirational leadership piece. And that will go all the way through to, let's say CPO, so Chief Product Officer, where you're going to be really managing, okay, what are the financials? You know, making sure your directors have different resources, right, for managing their individual products. Generally, the thread that I see as you go more senior into managing multiple products is, and the big mistake I see many people make is, to understand like how we get multiple products to drive towards the same outcome. It's very common to have disparate products, right? We've got one over here that does one thing, another over here that does another thing. They're not driving towards the same goal. So a good example of where that's done well, Uber, right? We have the taxi service, we have the little electric scooters. They're ultimately helping people get from A to B faster. Okay, as a simple example. But generally, yeah, over time, you're shifting away from execution more into product strategy and influencing stakeholders.
Okay, and to weave in a question from anonymous attendee, which I think is relevant to this. So what are the biggest product management challenges and how do you navigate them? So some concrete examples, please. So you're in a project manager role. What are your gnarly challenges?
Question. So let's start with what are the biggest risks to product success or failure? Because there are two ways to answer this. There are, okay, what are the day-to-day challenges you will face? If we look at that side, generally it's going to be stakeholder management. It's right. People don't understand product in most organizations. So it's, you're going to communicate, well, here's why we are building this feature versus this other feature. So communicating that using data, using stories, hey, we spoke to John, one of our key users yesterday, and he loves this new feature because of X, Y, Z. So stakeholder management would be an example of a big day-to-day challenge, keeping people aligned, explaining the context of decisions. But actually, I think particularly important for people looking to get into product, what do we need to focus on? So there are two key risks with any product, the two biggest risks. The first is, so 42% of products fail because there is no market need. What does that tend to translate to? That means that we haven't really addressed either, just it's not a problem that we're solving. It's not an acute problem that we're solving. And because of that, we've probably come up with a solution that doesn't really make sense, right? It's not really solving a problem, maybe not solving an acute problem, for example. So we have to really understand, okay, what is the problem that we're solving? So an example of that, right? I had this earlier on a coaching call. One of my students was coming up with ideas for the product he's going to build during Prod MBA. He said, well, you know what the problem is I really struggle to take notes whilst I'm in a meeting. Okay, so that's the problem. The kind of solutions you think of, well, are going to do some like better way of taking notes in a meeting. Whereas actually that's not the problem. What the problem is how do we make sure that we're taking action after a meeting? How do we communicate action steps to take or key points from the meeting after? It's not about taking notes. It's a level deeper about alignment, taking action, for example. So that's challenge, big mistake number one, right? Is failing to understand actually what the problem is we're trying to solve. Second one, big challenge, and one that is a continuous one, is differentiation. So products fail. If we look at there's a great study by CB Insights, looked at, I think it's around 200 startup postmortems, i.e. founders answering some questions after the startup failed. 6 out of 9 of the top reasons were related to lack of differentiation. Even lack of market need really comes to the fact that you didn't build a product that anyone cared about, essentially. That's really what differentiation is, right? We have a product that's both unique, right? It's different, it's noteworthy, but it still has to deliver value. Okay, I could write a book with a product book with a pink cover. That's unique. I haven't seen that before. Is it valuable? No, it depends what the content of the book is, for example. So second big thing is differentiation, always driving towards, okay, are we coming up with a differentiated product? Or if we have an existing product, if you're more likely you're coming into a new role as a product manager, there's an existing product there. Is the product differentiated? And how do we drive towards a differentiated product offer? These are sort of the big two things to be focused on. And then once you understand, okay, you've got a problem that you're solving, once you understand what your position in the market should be, like how you're going to differentiate that product, third is always going to be execution. And that's not easy. Lots of technical challenges, understanding of technical debt, these kind of things. Again, technical knowledge helps, experience helps, but if you can communicate effectively and get your team to communicate effectively with you, then you'll be able to execute effectively.
Cool, great. I'm going to stick with this theme of, sort of day, week in the life of challenges, what you do. A question: how close is product management to program management? What are the similarities and differences?
I'm not sure. I know some people that have done program management. My understanding from the very limited 2 or 3 conversations I've had, program management seems to be more of a project management role, if I'm correct. Yep. Richard, do you know if that's...
Yeah, I think they're pretty interchangeable. Sometimes it talks to scale, but I think, I don't know if you were on the call earlier, Manas, but Henry was talking a little bit more about the difference between needing to kind of execute and build versus sort of just keep the thing moving along in the project management phase. So is that what you would single on there, Henry?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's worth reiterating actually for I think everybody, but when we think of what product management, again, it depends on the title of what it should be. It's really about working out, okay, well, what should we build? And then, okay, how do we build it? And actually, usually we work with a product owner or a project manager to do the how do we build it part of it. Your role is to say, like, what can we build that's actually going to be valuable? How do we know it's valuable?
Yeah, and certainly some of the skills from program management around, deadlines, communication,
super important,
bringing teams along, stakeholder management, transfer hugely into.
I mean, you said 2 key words: execution, influence, stakeholder management. These are 2 of the 4 key competencies we need. Right on top of that, we've got sort of customer discovery and then product strategy.
And a great question as well. So from Marvin, what are the methodologies you need to learn as a PM? Because they are not part of the consultant skill set. So terms he's talking about: sprints, ideation, Scrum. So possibly the answer is product MBA will take you through that. But kind of how much should people be concerned about these, let's say, jargony or technical
it's
words and qualifications?
The question itself is very interesting. It's a very consultant question. I'll talk about the specific skills and methodologies. Good product management, if you look at, always a good thing, follow product leaders on LinkedIn, thought leaders. They don't write much about frameworks. Why? Because they're aware that good product management is more about, we call this the difference between sort of above the surface and below the surface skills, soft skills versus hard skills. It is really helpful, for example, to understand the Blue Ocean strategy framework to help you communicate how your product might differentiate itself in a market. Right? Example of a framework. It is more important, it is as important to have skills or cultivate skills like resilience, because, for example, you're going to have stakeholders pushing ideas at you constantly. You have to be able to say no to that. You have to stick firmly to, great, you've got this nice blue ocean showing how you're going to differentiate your product. Now you need to actually translate that to practice. You need to hammer that point home. You need to repeatedly communicate. For example, product, our differentiation is all about being hands-on and actionable. Everything we do, if we're thinking of a new module, new product we're working on, is it going to help us deliver more hands-on, actionable learning? If not, we're not going to do it. Right? Or Superhuman, a really great email product. They focus on being the fastest email experience ever. Now, they did their analysis. They used, again, Blue Ocean to see how they might differentiate themselves. But the actual hard part, the bit where they really, you as a product manager would deliver value, is in translating that then to execution and keeping people focused on what really matters. For Superhuman, that is being the fastest email experience ever, speed. For us, it's hands-on, being the most hands-on learning ever. Now, on skills and methodologies, there's a lot. I don't really want to just list them, but I would actually suggest going, if you want to have a quick look at what we think is essential, on the Prod MBA Bootcamp, there's a curriculum. Let me just get the link. I'll post it for you. I would say go through that, just have a look at the curriculum. And that's, that's really what we try to find frameworks for each of these 4 key competencies. So if we take communication, there's infinite things you could do when it comes to be a better communicator. One of them, for example, is what we call the product story canvas. So how do you communicate the what and the why behind a product effectively, as just one example. So I'm just going to post the link to the curriculum. You can have a look through the specific.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah, just to give you an idea of the kind of things that you might want to improve upon, might want to learn.
So I think high level answer there was, don't get too stressed by technical framework terms.
Yeah.
The real foundational skills are sort of less technical one. A very similar vein around day, week in the life of from Will. What's the difference between product management at large companies versus smaller companies?
Yeah, great question. So as a product manager in a smaller, let's use more specific terminology. We really have pre-product market fit and post-product market fit. So if we're pre-product market fit, it's still around discovering what it is we're going to do, right? Who's our market going to be? What is that product that's going to unlock lots of growth, in simple terms? In that kind of situation, you're doing a bit of everything, right? You're going to be most likely managing execution of the development team. You're going to have input on the product strategy. You're going to have to be working with data to help you inform decisions. That's quantitative data, like looking at your analytics dashboard, and qualitative data, speaking to your users every single week, right? To understand, what are the kind of trends going on? Are there any ideas, insights you can generate from those conversations? And communication piece is going to be really big, right? Maybe working with the founder, working with different teams quite closely. So that would be, early stage company. Post-product market fit, you most likely are trying to add fuel to the fire. So it's going to be less on the strategy piece. It's going to be more about, okay, we have a good idea of what we want, superhuman hits, let's say, okay, how do we make this email experience even faster for our users? So you have what ballpark you're playing in. In that case, it's going to be more about execution, understanding new technology, these kind of things, communicating with stakeholders, right? Making sure that everyone's still aligned as we have multiple product teams. And that also depends on what you like, right? I'm a startup guy. I like early stage. I like doing bits of everything. I like the uncertainty involved with that. I wouldn't want to work at, I wouldn't want to say never, but someone like working at Google doesn't really appeal to me, because most of your time is going to be on stakeholder management. Some people like that. Just really depends on your personality.
Gotcha. All right, we've got quite a few questions. I'm gonna try our best to get through a whole bunch within the next 6 minutes.
I'll try and be more concise.
5 minutes on. No, there's a load of stuff. So we'll try and do 30 seconds a question and crunch through 10 of these. So from Ben, how important is domain knowledge, e.g. knowing banking or payments if you want to join a challenger bank?
Yeah, it is important for certain industries where there is you need to understand the regulations, the technical issues, challenges, for example, like payment integrations, massive topic. So yes, it is important. Companies, I think particularly at the moment, facing a recession, are going to be more cautious hiring people without domain expertise.
Yeah, I always say, and actually it was said last week by Johnny at Deliveroo, companies rarely take two gambles at the same time on a hire. So if you don't have domain expertise and have never been a project manager, so you've just got to be a little bit mindful of the chessboard. You can make kind of one move at once and then make that move, be successful for a year, 18 months, make another move.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice.
There's quite a few questions around sort of cuts in the tech sector, how you see that impacting product management jobs. I've got a viewpoint there. I wonder what yours is, Henry.
So yeah, specifically, are
layoffs recently.
Are layoffs going to are there implications for you trying to get into product management? Yes, it will be harder getting into product because people are despite actually it's the time to take more risks, I think, as an organization, but that's another conversation. They are less likely to take risks on somebody without proven experience. So what do I say to suggest there? You have to build really concrete experience. That's why we do what we do at Product MBA. Like, we get you to build a real product, because it's not the same as doing a course, right? It's just not the same. You don't need to do that with us or, you know, another boot camp though. Like, you can go build your own product, but you need to be able to prove, like, here's a real concrete product that I've worked on. That's just going to address those fears they might have. You know, they might say, okay, you know, here we got, you know, Laura, like, really strong consulting background. We love it. We think you're probably really strong on business. You seem to be really logical. You seem to be really good in this case study, but we're always going to have that question mark. Are you a builder, for example? So you want to balance that out by building something concrete. Again, it can be a side project, can be through working with us. So that's the way to counter it. And you know, there are still lots of roles in product management going. I think as things are right now, I see a lot of people being hired. You know, somebody got let go in December. She is in the final stage of interview, likely to get that role this week. There are lots of companies hiring full product managers. There's a shift in the market currently, right? Some companies are closing roles, others are opening them. So yes, there's a bit of a slowdown, but there are still a lot of roles out there. You know what I always say to people, it comes back to that example, you know, the point I made about building real experience. You need to be able to answer the question, like, why the hell should they hire you? If you have not proven that you've been extremely proactive in building product management experience in whatever form that might be, right? Just building product doesn't necessarily need to be in a company. Then, you know, my answer would be, well, recession or not, like, why should they hire you? Because there are 20 other people that have put that work in.
Yeah. And that's kind of one of the macro points I guess I've got a macro hiring recruitment viewpoint. I would say in any role that you're applying for, product or anything else in the world, being truly interested and passionate and demonstrating that really comes across. So if you 100%. Really want the job, you know, you will go and build a product or go and do
I always have a good litmus test, right? You know, I get lots of people, it could be friends or people on LinkedIn that reach out to me and say, look, I'm really interested in getting into product management. I always say the same thing. And I you know, many people, I just expect they're not going to do it because they're flirting with the idea of it, right? They sort of like the idea, dip their toe. It's nice to feel wanted, right? You know, you go and interview, someone might give you an offer, but you have to just put the work in, particularly with product management. Unlike, say, for example, you could learn to be a software engineer by going and doing a boot camp where you're given the theory, you're live coding, right? You're building some sort of real technology there. It's fairly black and white, right? You build a function to do A and A will happen, right? So 1 + 1 = 2 if you put something in. In product, it's very nuanced. Theory is very different from reality. So that real world experience, that having gone through the mess, the uncertainty of product is extremely valuable and is extremely valued by people hiring product managers.
Cool. Couple of questions similar around, one is around somebody who's been consulting in product management. Is it easy to move into an organization, so industry, be a product manager? Any thoughts on that and how it transfers?
Sorry, just recap the question again.
So as a senior consulting product manager, many customers, is it easy to make the switch to a project management role within an organization? So I don't know, go and work for Google or...
Yeah, good question. Honestly, I'm not sure, having not done that or come across that exact situation, so I'd be hesitant to ask. But again, it's the principles are always the same, which is, can you demonstrate you have these skills that they're looking for in a product manager? So if you can demonstrate you can communicate and influence stakeholders effectively, you've ticked that box. If you can demonstrate that you understand the strategic context of a product, how we differentiated it, potential revenue models, road mapping, you've ticked that box. Third, if you've demonstrated you can do customer discovery, right, speak to customers, gather data from them, you've ticked that box. Fourth, if you've shown execution, you've ticked that box. And actually, for more senior roles, I've seen, for example, founders go straight into senior PM or lead PM roles because they don't need to execute at that level. So it's like, hey, maybe, you don't understand how to manage, bring in a scrum process, how to manage execution, but we don't care because you're not going to be doing that stuff anyway.
Yeah. And I think one closing thought I'd give on the sort of transition between any job when you're putting forward an application is to focus on the skill set. So consultants in particular tend to structure their resume and application along the lines of consulting project A, some bullet points, consulting project B. That's actually quite hard if you're a hiring manager to scan and digest the skills you're trying to hire for, right? So most hiring managers spend 5 to 10 seconds, and it is embarrassingly little time, scanning your CV. And what they want to do is go, right, I'm hiring for a product manager. What I want to see is, communication, whatever the skills are that we've been through today. If you can lay out those headings, communication, bullet point, stakeholder management, bullet point, analytics, bullet point, they're suddenly going down your CV and going, yeah, skills, boom, 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 I can see it. And remember, an application is just a route to get to interview. So
and
framing those skills, ticking them off.
We address, we do CV analysis and helping you build things. Also, like, what's your personal narrative? What we call your hero's journey. These kind of things are a big part of what we do. Because even experienced product managers are just awful at selling themselves as product managers. So that's a big part of it's great if you've got the skills, but you need to be able to sell them as well effectively.
Absolutely. Right, guys. Before we head off, Henry is going to chat you through an offer that he's put together bespoke for people on this call and Move Me On users. Before he gets into that, thanks for joining. Sorry we didn't get through all of your questions. There were so many good ones. I'll probably try and copy them, try and find a way to get back to you on some of them, but hopefully, we've answered plenty that everybody was interested in.
But I also say, look, feel free to reach out to me directly. I post daily on LinkedIn, sort of product tactics, career hacks as well. So just search Henry Latham, as you see it on my Zoom, on LinkedIn, and send me a connection message, and I'll happily answer your questions on there over the next week.
And I've dropped in the chat. So if you're interested in our content generally, I've dropped in 3 links there. One's to me on LinkedIn. Go hit follow. You'll start to see my stuff. Some of it might entertain you. Some of it might be interesting. I also do a LinkedIn newsletter and an email newsletter. So 3 links from me there. And I'll hand over to Henry to talk to you about what he's cooked up.
Awesome. Yeah, so we decided to work with Move Me On to come up with a really unique offer just for consultants, just people actually on this webinar. Essentially, what we're doing is we're taking what we've done with Product MBA. We've had a lot of success with 280 aspiring PMs and existing PMs there, and we're going to take that 8-week boot camp and offer it to you essentially for free. How does this work? In terms of our structure, we only charge if we successfully get you into your first product management role. What is the process? How do we actually make that happen? Well, we're going to do that by getting you to actually build a real product from scratch during our 8-week boot camp. Why are we doing that? Because that's helping you take theory, putting it into practice. So not only are you going to come out with a really strong product, but also you're going to be building your own product management playbook in the process. So you're understanding how we operate as product managers, but also you've got really nice concrete product to point to show that you've got the goods ultimately when it comes to interviewing. So it's going to give you really strong product management experience, a really strong case study to help you get into that role. And also we help you do things like craft your CV, craft your personal narrative, as I said, to really, inspire people and get you into those final interviews. So that's it's going to be a part-time, it's about 6 to 8 hours per week, 8-week boot camp with the outcome of pitching the case study to us and ultimately getting you to actually apply successfully for a product management role. So as I said, we only charge if we successfully get you into that product management role. So if this is something that's interested, if you are serious about it as well, it does take work. This isn't something that magically happens overnight. Then I'm inviting you to book a call with me, an application call, way to get to know you, to see if this might be a good fit both for you, but also for us as an organization. So I'm just posting that link there, a Calendly link, and you can book a call book something in next week, and we can see whether this might be a good fit, and really just talk through, you know, the details of it. How does it work, curriculum, outcomes we're looking for, etc. on there. And any questions on that as well, do feel free to reach out.
Thanks for pointing out that the chat was not available to everybody. That's because I'm obviously not a great product user or product manager. Can everybody now see all those links? I've put back in the ones to my stuff on LinkedIn, Henry's curriculum that he talked about earlier, and then Henry's application, the call link. And I really want to thank Henry for this. So I twisted Henry's arm. Henry normally charges up front for his product MBA, the 8-week bootcamp, as rightfully he should. And I said, well, how about we do a version where you get paid when people make that transition into product management. So I really want to thank Henry, because I think that creates a really compelling reason for people to be able to go and build something and get their foot in the door and show that they have a real passion and interest in doing this. Henry, just a question for me. Is this, how part-time is this? How much time does it take over 8 weeks?
Yeah, good question. So it's about 6 to 8 hours per week, built around a busy work schedule. So we have, you're going to have an hour to go through the pre-recorded videos to give you the theory. We then have 2 live workshops every week on Tuesday and Thursday. 1 hour really hands-on, where we're really putting theory into practice. And then there's usually about 2 hours to complete your assignment each week. Like the assignments where you actually go off into the real world, test out your ideas with real users. And then every 2 weeks, you're going to have a one-on-one with me. We do things like match you for a virtual coffee with other people as well, just to get that sort of support and feedback. So again, designed to be built around a busy work schedule.
So intense, but able to do it alongside a full-time job is the answer. Great. So hopefully everybody's got Henry's Calendly link. Henry, I really also love the fact that you want to have a chat with people and make sure this is going to be right for them and right for you. I think that's a real admirable way to kick things off. Without any further ado, I hope that answers at least as many questions as we can. Do go follow us on LinkedIn. Do connect with Henry if you've got burning other questions. Good questions around costs. Henry, what's the cost?
Yeah, good. So the cost is £2,500, 2,499. So we charge that within 60 days of starting that product management role. In most cases, that is most likely going to be a cost that you have to cover yourself. Someone wrote, can it be paid by the employer? If you can negotiate it with them, we have a sort of a PDF, some talking points that you can pitch to them. It can happen, right? You know, maybe they want to support you getting into product management, that first role. So that's something that I know others have tried before, whether trying to get it paid up front or is in this unique offer we're doing today.
Okay, so it's £2,500. It's the same price that other people have paid up front to do it.
Correct. Yeah.
The difference is via Move Me On, it's due only if you get that first product role.
Exactly.
And if you can convince an employer to pay for it, which I find not beyond the realms of possibility at all, that's totally up to you. And due 60 days after start date?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for putting that together, Henry. I think it's a super innovative, offer. I've never come across one like that before. And hopefully folks will use that link and grab some time to chat.
We're confident with results now. We've got 200.
And last but not least, guys, obviously through Move Me On, I think lots of you will be users of Move Me On. If you're not, it's a free platform. Go sign up. There's an increasing flow of product management opportunities because of this demand to transfer that consulting skill set. So just head over to movemeon.com and grab yourself an account. Awesome. 5 minutes over. I'm getting worse.
Yeah, I was keeping it.
But lots of important things like we can't actually see the chat and what does this thing cost answered. But appreciate you all joining. Have a great rest of the day.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining.
Bye, Henry. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.